from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. Happy to be with you guys. Hope you had a great weekend. If you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Of course, that's Valdez with an S, and the same way it is on social media. Happy to chat with you there as well. And a couple of stories, right? It was the Grammy Awards yesterday, and let me tell you, I know most people. I think the going terms, who cares? I hate the Oscars. I hate the Grammys. I don't. I actually enjoy the Grammys. I do. When I'm in my car, I'm listening to pop music, hip hop, reggaeton. Those are the things that I'm listening to. In addition to lots of talk radio, but when I'm not listening to that stuff. I don't mind watching the Grammys once a year. However, in the last 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, right? I think 2018 might have been the last time that I really watched the Grammys. Matter of fact, I even threw a party, had a viewing party. It was a really fun time. But since then, I feel it's become increasingly more and more and more woke. And there's always a focus on wokeness. Now, I didn't hear too much of the wokeness last night. I didn't see the program, but there was some. In Spanish, we would say un revolú. There was a whole controversy there with one of the rappers who won 3 Grammy Awards getting arrested for getting into some sort of altercation. And it happens to be the same rapper that was on the Bill Maher show saying that he would not endorse Joe Biden. Now, some people were speculating that one thing had to do with the other. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I'm not sure. I don't know the full story there, but we will get to the bottom of it. Now, in other news, a couple of things I want to talk about. The president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, he's been reelected with 83% of the vote. That's big. 83%. That's huge. While his nearest competitor had only 7% of the vote. And this is a guy that was very tough on crime, really tough. Like, they were dealing with major issues with gangs, and he just locked them all up, for lack of a whole lot of better words. He's been extremely tough on crime. A lot of people are saying he's, the favorite dictator for Latin America. Of course, once you become tough on crime and you do anything that you're supposed to do to be traditional in any of your views, right away you become a dictator. You become, they treat you like Trump, and they're trying to treat this guy like Trump. I'm not a huge fan. I don't really know him. From what I've seen, I like him. He has a good record. He seems to be tough on crime. He's made El Salvador great. You know what that does? It reduces illegal immigration from El Salvador because people don't want to leave El Salvador as much because they can stay in their country. There's opportunities in their country. They see hope, and they don't see despair. So they say, if things get any worse in the United States, we're going to start emigrating somewhere, right? I don't know where, but there is no last hope, right? We are the last hope. But it would be great to, the libs always say, we're going to go to Canada. I don't know. I'm going to defect from the New York metro area, from here in Jersey, to somewhere in South Florida. I'm pretty sure of that. Only time will tell. But where do those people go? Well, they're staying. They're staying in El Salvador, most of them. I wouldn't say most, but some of them are staying in El Salvador. And they've reelected their president with 83% of the vote. So I'm going to get into that in a little bit as well. I also want to talk about this NBC poll that has Trump beating Biden in the biggest lead yet. Yep. This is from, let's see here. Let's take a look here. I'm trying to give you some of these numbers. Here we go. So we're looking at how he's doing 60% disapprove of Joe Biden. Isn't that something? Wow. That's according to NBC News. And I'll get into that in a little bit as well. But it doesn't surprise me. Biden is a sinking ship. How long is he going to be around? I don't know. But clearly, even Democrats are very upset. I saw an audio clip. And I was shocked when I saw the guy who played Remy in, I guess that's Higher Learning. And he plays like a skinhead, but then he turns out to be this rabid liberal anti-Trumper. Very famous. I'm just forgetting his name. Curses all the time. I'll play the clip for you. Michael Rappaport. And Michael Rappaport, he shocked the world, I don't know, 7 or 8 months ago, when he said, hey, I'm starting to look at Trump. And meanwhile, he puts out another video over the weekend because he's disgusted with what he saw happening with immigration. And he says now that Trump is in play. And I think that's very telling that Democrats are kind of, I don't know, are they getting sweet on Trump? Check this out.
Trump is on the table. The other day in New York City, 6 illegal aliens jumped a New York City cop, NYPD's finest. They jumped a New York City cop in Times Square and were arrested and released without bail. I know it's a city thing. I know it's a state thing. I know all that. Okay? Stay with me. Released without bail. Came out of the courtroom on some Tupac middle finger with the Detroit Red Wings jersey. Let me tell you something. What the is the world coming to? If you could be from another country, beat up a cop in New York City and walk out with no bail, what the is the world coming to? What the is the world coming to? I know, Mayor Adams, you're from Brownsville, Brooklyn. I know this. Like, what the have I gotten myself into? Stay with me.
Okay, now that is actor Michael Rappaport. I always call him Remy from the movie Higher Learning, and that famous curb stomp scene. And let me tell you, this guy, I've never been a fan. And I'm not saying he's not talented. I was a fan of his acting work. I'm just saying his political stuff. You know, obviously he was very hard to the left. But I think he's seen what happens when you go so far to the left. We're living it, right? You had Ayanna Pressley the other day. I mentioned this, I think, on Friday, where she was complaining that Walgreens had left San Francisco, and she was like, shame on them, because the moms don't have a place to buy their sanitary napkins, and the moms don't have a place to buy their baby formula, and this is a disservice to the community. Meanwhile, the real disservice to the community is the rampant crime that's allowed to occur. On my Instagram today, I shared a story from a law enforcement account. That was a video of an NYPD officer trying to arrest someone inside of a tent city that Mayor Adams has constructed. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has constructed these tent cities with cots all over the place. It looks like a prison. It's disastrous. And they're all laughing and taunting the cops. These are the worst of the worst from whatever country they're coming from. They're not here to bring any good tidings or good cheer. We're in really bad shape, and I think most of us don't even know what's going on. All we see is stuff at the border, and we think, oh, new Americans that are here to help. Yeah, it's only going to get worse, folks. We're going to continue that conversation straight ahead. You guys may have heard of Jesse Lee Peterson. You've seen him on television. You've heard him on the radio. He's a great commentator. He's coming up next. He's scheduled to come up next with us to discuss this and a lot of other things. So keep it locked right there. And again, if you want to join the conversation, feel free. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our discussion, and we're talking about Biden. We're talking about the border. We're talking about him losing minority votes and so much more. And I want to get to the bottom of it with our guest, the Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. He's the host of a fantastic show, and he's with us right now. Rev, welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me on, Rich. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. So I want to play a clip for you, and it's a little longer than I normally play, but we might get out of it quick. But I want you to hear what Killer Mike, the rapper, told Bill Maher when he was on his program, saying that he was kind of pressed to support Joe Biden, and he wouldn't do it. Listen to this.
What are your feelings on the election coming up? I mean, Biden and Trump. Are you as depressed about that as most people as a choice?
My feeling is pick your policy, not your person. Find out. This is not the Dallas Cowboys versus your favorite team. This is the policies that will affect our generations for the next 20, 30, 40 years to come. So close your eyes, listen to the policies that are being pushed, and pay attention even to the people who don't have a chance of winning, because they're going to say policies you may want to push. And I would say do that, but make it policy-based.
So that means you're for...
That means I'm for black people and happy Black History Month.
But you're not saying one candidate over the other?
Hey, man, my nigga, you ain't gonna get me in no trouble tonight.
All right, there you go. So he tells Bill Maher, hey, you're not getting me into any trouble tonight. Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, what do you make of this? Do you think that this is indicative of so many others in the black community? It seems to be. You got 50 Cent that's, he's been out there saying some stuff that he's not happy with immigration. Snoop Dogg's praising Trump. There seems to be a shift in the sentiment in the hip hop community. What do you think?
Well, you're absolutely right, especially with black men. Black men seem to be supporting the Great White Hope, Donald Trump, over the black women. And there are a lot of some black women who are supporting him too, but mostly black men. And I believe it's because a lot of, especially with the rappers and the entertainers, they knew Donald Trump prior to him becoming the president the first time around, and they liked him then. But for some reason, they fell for the lie coming from the Democratic Party with Donald Trump first ran, and the second time that he ran. But now they're starting to wake up and see the reality between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And Joe Biden clearly is not for the people. A lot of blacks are suffering more now than they did, when Donald Trump was there. They had work, they had money in their pockets, things were cheaper, gas prices were lower, a lot of blacks were working. And that has all changed. And also the blacks can see that Joe Biden and this administration are allowing the illegal aliens to come in, inviting them in, and a lot of these people are ending up in the inner cities. Yeah. And in the inner cities, things are already bad, but these people are bringing in crime and drugs, and they're going to war with the black citizens, and so they are really being affected by that. And the so-called black leadership refuse to do anything about that as well. So it's definitely having an impact, which I think is a good thing.
Now, I'm seeing articles from some of the left-wing publications that are basically trying to set the stage saying, look, if Biden wins in South Carolina, then he doesn't have any issues with the black vote. Do you think that's accurate?
Not at all. It's not true. And I would be surprised, you never know how things really going to turn out until they happen. Right. But I would be surprised that black people are supporting Joe Biden this time around as they did before. I don't think it's going to happen in the way that the media is trying to make us believe. It's just not true. And plus, you can't trust the media at all, especially the liberal media, and not all conservative media, because a lot of conservative media are not for Donald Trump as well, because they are for themselves. They're not thinking about the people at all. So, but you just can't trust them now, and a lot of people know that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, do you think that there is a Hail Mary approach that Biden or maybe Harris might be able to pull off? Do they join forces, or do they stay as disparate as they've been for Biden to try and make a play for black votes? Do you think maybe Obama comes in to try to save him, or is there the entrance of Michelle Obama later on?
Well, I hear that, according to what I'm hearing, I don't know if it's true or not,
Right.
but Obama's already I don't know if he's ever not been involved, but he's already trying to do that now to come in and try to draw the black voters back in. And as far as Harris, she's never really been a favor of the black people. Even when she ran for president, she quit a long time ago because the blacks were not in support of her. Now, as far as Big Mama Michelle, I don't know, man. I just personally, and I could be wrong,
Right.
I don't think Michelle is going to run. I know she'd probably be involved in trying to help get the black votes out. But who knows with the Democrats? You can't trust them at all. They are desperate to maintain power, so-called power and wealth for themselves. So they may try to bring Big Mama Michelle in at the last minute, but I would be surprised. But who knows? They can't be trusted at all.
Now, earlier you mentioned black men as being the number one defector of, within the Democrat establishment of Biden and even the Democrats. And I don't doubt that in any way. I think I agree with you. But I'm wondering why specifically black men and even Hispanic men. It's also Hispanic men. Do you think it's a situation of machismo? Is it employment? Why do you think? Do you think it's this big push that the Democrat Party has kind of taken on the leftist mantra of pushing for transgenderism and queer theory and all of that, and that may not sit well in that community? What are your thoughts?
Well, all of those things have definitely had an impact. But one thing that I've noticed that the Biden administration tend to focus on black females as opposed to black men. In a normal society, it is known that the order of God is God in Christ, Christ in man, man over the woman, and woman over children. It's a spiritual order. And normally you encourage men to work and to lead the family and to lead the way. But with the Biden administration, there's a clear focus on the black female as opposed to black men. And I think personally, because I do hear it sometimes from some black men, they're taking an offense to that because it shows a disrespect for the black man by putting the black woman before the man. And the ever since the so-called civil rights movement happened, which was the worst thing that ever happened to the blacks other than abortion itself, was the civil rights movement. And since the civil rights movement, the so-called black leaders, the Democratic Party have always put the black woman before the man.
Well, Rev, I want you to stand by. We're going to take a quick pause. We're coming right back with the Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson discussing why the civil rights movement, in his opinion, was the worst thing to happen to black America. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez. All right, America, welcome back. We're on with the Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, and we're having a conversation on lots of things, but specifically his most recent comment that the civil rights movement was the worst thing to happen to black Americans. Jesse Lee Peterson, why do you say that?
Well, the reason I say that the civil rights movement is the worst thing that happened to the blacks other than abortion is because I grew up on a plantation down in Alabama. I grew up under the so-called Jim Crow laws where the signs were there. And I grew up at a time when black people, they had families. They were individual thinkers. They did not have so-called leadership over them. Only God was over them. And the family, the parents were over the children, and God was over the parents. And they worked hard. They bought land. I have family members who had 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 kids in some cases or more, but yet they own land. They sent their children to school. A lot of them went to college, and they did well. They came back as educators, and they were independent thinkers, and they did not hate the white man. They were not blaming white people for their issues because they understood the issues were spiritual, and that our battle was a spiritual battle between good and evil and not physical at all. And so the blacks treated the whites the way that they would like to be treated, and most of the whites treated the blacks the way that they would like to be treated because we understood that it was spiritual. And blacks were independent thinkers, and they worked hard. But once the civil rights movement came along with Martin Luther King and others, they deceived the blacks by coming up with this phony idea that racism exists and the white man was trying to hold you back and you should be mad at them and we want to be your leaders. And a lot of blacks fell for the lie that, okay, we'll let you be our leaders. And they started to allow Jesse Jackson, Martin Luther King, and others to think for them. And it began in, Rich, at first, most blacks were Republicans during that time.
Yeah.
Because the Democrats would not allow the blacks to be a part of the Democratic Party. And so they were Republicans, and that's who started the Republican Party was blacks and whites together because they were not allowed into the Democratic Party. Even Martin Luther King at the time was a Republican, but they made deal with the Democrats under Lyndon B. Johnson, and they decided, okay, we're going to bring the blacks over to the Democratic Party if you let us be the leaders. And so they offered them governmental programs, and at that time they started giving the woman everything and making her feel she was better than the man, and they set themselves up as leaders. And then the blacks stopped thinking for themselves. They stopped believing in God. They stopped believing in marriage, and they allowed these people to become their gods, and it's just been downhill ever since. And that's why the blacks are suffering, not because of racism. Racism doesn't exist because they are angry. They have hatred in their hearts. And it doesn't start with the white people. It starts in the home because most of the blacks are angry at their mothers and yearning for their fathers, but they have been told that it's the white man. They just stopped thinking for themselves, and it's just been hell ever since.
Wow, that was a lot, and I can't say I disagree with you because I think you were spot on. But I think the psychological aspect you just mentioned is really an interesting one that I haven't heard before from that perspective, right? I think we've heard from the perspective that, we have to be nicer or different or lenient with black men in particular because they're disproportionately represented in prisons. And because they're incarcerated at higher rates, then that somehow must be a result of something that we've done. And because they're angry and because they're afflicted, they are more susceptible to crime. And this is something I got to say. Look, my parents are Puerto Rican, both born in Puerto Rico. I was born in Brooklyn. And I've felt different growing up, and we were poor, and we went through a lot of things. But I never felt like I should be treated different than everyone else because of my humble beginnings. So when I hear those arguments, I think, you know what? That sounds like a lot of BS to me. But the position that you've put it from, which is they're hurt because of issues with their moms and they're yearning for their dads, that to me makes all the sense in the world, Rev.
I can promise you, and without a doubt, that all people really who are turned away from their fathers are yearning for a return to the Father, the love of a father. But because human heart is evil, until they are born again of the Father, they are deceiving the people for their own thrills. They deceive the people in order to control them so they can feel better about the hell that they live in. And so the blacks are being deceived not only by liberal whites and some right-o Republicans, but by black people, period. The so-called leadership, all these black mayors and the black governors and the blacks, they are deceiving the blacks for personal gain, because as long as they can keep the blacks angry and keep them blaming the white man for their anger, they're going to use the blacks for personal gain, and they're never going to make the situation better, because if the blacks ever woke up, those people would be out of business. And so, again, it's a spiritual battle. I can promise you, too, that the black issues, the black people who are having issues, the white people has nothing to do with it, period. Zero. It has nothing to do with slavery. It has nothing to do with systemic racism. It has nothing to do with Jim Crow. It has everything to do with the destruction of the family. The mothers took over the home. She turned the children away from the fathers, and the children were created in her image, the hell that she lived in. That's why the kids are angry. The boys and the girls act just like their mothers and grandmothers, because you become like what you hate. But instead of being honest about that, they blame it on the whites because they want to use the blacks. Our battle is a spiritual battle. It's not physical. Never has been, never will be, ain't going to be. It's impossible. It's all spiritual. That's why I tell all people, in order to go free, they must overcome anger. Anger is evil. Anger is the nature of evil. And until they go and forgive their mothers and grandmothers for turning them away from their fathers, and forgive their fathers for not protecting them from evil in their mothers, stand between the children and the mothers, they're never going to be happy. I don't care what the white man gave them or however they agreed. They're still going to be miserable until they overcome the anger and return to the fathers.
Wow.
And that's for
Very
all
deep.
people.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a wound that has to be healed. Otherwise, people will live a lifetime fighting through that wound. Folks, we're on with Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. He's a radio host, a broadcaster, and the founder of the Christian ministry, Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny, BOND, or Bond. And we're going to come right back with him and wrap up on this topic. And I want to get your thoughts on immigration. Elon Musk has some musings on why immigration is as out of control as it is. And I'm wondering if you think he's right. Don't go anywhere. Jesse Lee Peterson with Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. It's Rich Valdez. I'm here with Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. He is the founder of a Christian ministry called Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny, BOND. And, Rev, Elon Musk took to Twitter to make a comment, and his comment was pretty succinct, right? He basically says that the immigration problem at the border is really about Biden remaking the electorate. Do you think he's right?
Absolutely. It's 100% about that. You know, I was thinking the other day, we hire a government to take care of and solve problems for us, fix the road, to our military, shut down the borders, protect us from our enemies. And instead of solving problems like that, the government create problems. And that's all this administration has done, is to create problems. And it's because they're on an ego trip, they're about themselves and not about we, the people. They work against us and not for us. And that's why they leave the borders open. That's why they invite the illegal aliens from around the world to come on in. It doesn't matter, because they're thinking about getting votes for themselves, staying in power, and so-called power and try to figure out how they can keep money in their pockets. They could care less about the American people. Think about this, Rich. They send money to Ukraine and all around the world, but not one dime on building the wall, finishing the wall that the Great White Hope started, drilling oil so that the American people can work and making it safe, a strong military. Everything about our country is weaker and not stronger. The government is not our friend. They only bring problems. They keep the race divided by pretending that it's racism or white supremacism. It's none of those things, but they want us fighting so that they can use us for personal gain.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're making a really good point. And what I find interesting about this is how the Biden administration, they just turn a blind eye to just about everything. And ultimately, long story short, I had some work done in my bathroom, and the guy that I hired to do the work in my bathroom is a black guy. And I follow his business on one of the social media. And when I saw a post that he put today, it was nothing to do with bathroom renovation. He said, let me tell you something, folks. These people that are coming through the border are replacing men like me, black men that are out here trying to make a living. And it was a fascinating post because he didn't strike me as an overtly political guy, but he was basically saying that illegal immigration is gonna hit him and black men, and I think he even mentioned Hispanic men who were here already looking for work that are going to be undercut by the onslaught and influx of cheap labor. And I thought, there's something we talk about sometimes, but now it's not people like you and me talking about it. This is the guy who redid my bathroom. and I just thought that was remarkable that these are the conversations that we're hearing from small business owners.
It is true. May I give out my website so people can find
Absolutely.
Us? It's rebuildingthemand.com, rebuildingthemand.com, or jesseleepeterson.com, jesseleepeterson.com. And one thing I want to add to what you said is that you notice the blacks have elected black representatives, black congressmen, black mayors, and black this. And those black people are not standing up for the blacks. They're not saying no, shut down the borders. They're not even looking out for the blacks who voted for them because they don't care, Rich. They're just about whatever it is to keep them in power, to receive so-called money and power for themselves. They don't, when the last time you heard a black representative say shut down, a black Democrat especially, saying shut down the borders, Biden, we need work. Stop letting these illegals come into our community. Shut down the border, protect the black community. Instead, they stand with Joe Biden. Look at the mayor of Chicago and the mayor of New York and all over the places. They stand against the blacks that voted for them and not for the blacks, but they pretend that racism exists. They're liars, they're deceivers, and they're using the blacks for their own personal gain. And that's why I'm encouraging all people to become individuals again. This is the United States of America. And what made this country so great is that we were individuals who thought and did for ourselves and not group thinking. Because whenever you join a group, you're going to think like the group. And that group going to lead you down the pathway of destruction. But the man or woman who's willing to stand by themselves, and they'll be able to work with the people who are on the side of good. We got to combat that to this. That rapper guy that you played
Killer Mike.
Very beginning, the one thing he said that I disagree with, he said that he was for the black people, something like that, right?
Right.
Something like that. But we are Americans, man. We are one nation under God, and we got to stop being separate as American citizens. We got to stop seeing race and see what's right and do what's right for the country, not based on colors, but based on what is right.
Amen to that, Rev. Now, I want you to let everybody know how they could follow you on social media.
They could go to rebuildingtheman.com, rebuildingtheman.com, thefallenstate.tv, the FALLEN, thefallenstate.tv, or jesseleepeterson.com.
Folks, check out those websites. Follow him on Instagram and Twitter and wherever else you're doing social media, because he's a good follow. I see him all over social media, and it's excellent content. You hear some of this provocative stuff that really makes you think. And, Rev, I want to thank you for staying up late with us. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, and we got to get the great white hope, Donald Trump, back in office.
I love that. All right. Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, thank you, sir. And straight ahead, of course, your calls and more, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Quite a conversation with the Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. Make sure you check out his website, rebuildingtheman.com. And I want to continue this discussion on, are Black Americans on board with Joe Biden or not, or Hispanic Americans? Because I think we overstate that, right? I hope that what we're seeing is an actual trend come Election Day, because it seems like Biden's losing it. Now, does that mean that he won't get the majority? No, I think he'll still get the majority of black votes. Black men are still probably going to come out strong for the Democrats. But I think it's a question of, what percentage and how much of a loss in that percentage will he suffer. And, this is coming from the party that once dominated like close to 90%. Will it be close to 70? Will it be close to 60? We'll see. We'll see how that goes down. But there's an interesting clip that I saw from Fox News. This is a good one. So the correspondent is on the street outside of a housing project in Brooklyn, New York, and he gets the reactions from the folks on the street telling them, hey, the Biden administration's invested $25 million into your community. Listen to this.
Joe Biden's giving this neighborhood $25 million.
Oh, $25 million.
Wow, what the hell? Are you serious? Right.
USA, USA.
What do you think it should be spent on?
The schools, the parks.
The illegal immigration problem.
Fresh fruits, vegetables.
This is life. That elevator over there, broken. These houses, dirty.
Recreation for the kids to get out the street.
Well, sorry. He's spending it all so you could charge your electric scooter.
Get the out of here, Joe.
I don't like that. That's ghetto.
What's...
He's spending on charges? Man, they need to charge his brain.
They had to take the top of my head off a couple times, see if I had a brain.
Biden says once he installs these chargers for electric scooters, there will be less racism.
How does that equal less racism?
Come on, you're kidding me. There's no racism here.
There's actually more racist that he's doing this because it's really not helping the community.
I don't see the correlation. But I also don't see the correlation between Joe Biden and being president. I don't know who put that motherfucker in office, but it wasn't me.
So you don't like him? Yeah.
Well, if you don't know if you're voting for Trump or Biden, according to Biden, then you ain't black, right? He said that to Charlemagne the God quite famously in the last election. So we'll see how this continues to go for Joe El Baboso Biden. Plus, we're going to get an update on what's going on with the strikes from the United States. 85 strikes have taken place. We're going to get an update on that from Major General Bob Dees coming up straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy to be here with you. Hour number 2 of the program. If you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And over the weekend, I saw that former Senator Lieberman, who ran for president, he gave an interview, and he says that Trump got the Middle East right. And I think that's important to note because, he was a independent, center-left kind of guy. And a lot of people think Trump's foreign policy was not there, right? He turned things upside down. He made all these problems with China. He focused so much on China that the rest of the world was ignored. These are some of the criticisms I've heard. But I tend to think, I just take the facts as what they are. We were safe. There were Abraham Accords. There was talk of peace in the Middle East. And I think he even got nominated for a couple of Nobel Peace Prizes. So what gives, right? What gives is really the question that I have. Over the last few days, we've had some conversations about why Biden was silent on the death of these American service members that were murdered. And then there was a response, and the United States launched 85 strikes. And Jake Sullivan was asked what his thoughts were over the weekend on the Sunday shows. Here's what he said.
We do believe that the strikes had good effect in degrading the capabilities of these militia groups to attack us. And we do believe that as we continue, we will be able to continue to send a strong message about the United States' firm resolve to respond when our forces are attacked.
Now, of course, critics like me say, you know what, you can't sit there and tell the bad guys that you're coming and you're coming and you're coming and give them, several days to prepare and then strike and then think that this is somehow effective at sending a strong message. Now, maybe I'm wrong. We've heard, from other military officials on what their thoughts are. But I want to get an update now that the weekend's passed and we've seen how things have gone. And I also want to speak with an expert. And I say he's an expert because this is a retired Major General that spent more than 3 decades in the U.S. Army and a lot of command staff positions, but including as commander of the U.S.-Israeli Combined Task Force for Missile Defense. And he now runs the Center for Healthy Veterans. Welcome, Major General Bob Dees. Sir.
Rich, great to be with you again.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you being here, sir. And I want to get your take on this because, General Dees, there's a lot of talk, and some people I think are shy to mince words. I think others maybe just don't have the command on this subject that you do. But I, as an innocent bystander, if you can call me that, as a layman, I think that Biden made a lot of tactical blunders and made America look very, very weak and potentially put us in more danger with the way he responded to these things. Do you think that the 85 strikes were effective, like Jake Sullivan said? Was it theater or was it actually effective?
Well, the real measure is whether it deters. Deterrence is what we're seeking to prevent some of their actions. As I understand, just this last night, there was another attack. The same people that we attacked, there was another attack by them in retribution. They killed 6 Kurdish folks and, placed more Americans at risk. So the first acid test is, did it deter? Not yet. To give the administration credit, they have taken action. It was slow. They signaled their punch, but they've taken action. I hope it's effective. But their battle damage assessment is critical. They've got to, after each of these attacks, they've got to see if they produced impressive effects or if they actually produced good outcomes that deter the proxies on the ground. We'll see.
Right. Well, again, if we just take this snapshot in time, and again, you're the retired general, not me, But I'm thinking 85 strikes, and you're still going to come and attack and kill 6 more people. Clearly, this thing didn't work, right? If my mother was around, she'd be throwing her chancleta at me, her slipper, and she'd say, "You didn't get it right."
Yeah, of course.
So, what
of
gives
course.
here? Do we do it again?
Well, they need to. This is a campaign. It's there are really 2 campaigns going on. One is campaign to deter Iran from further action by their proxies. I can address that later because I don't think we're attacking the right people. We need to make Iran pay for this as much as their proxies. And then secondly, we just have a defensive battle going on in the Red Sea. They've shut off some of the major shipping of the world. This is one of our national strategic objectives that has been grossly violated, and the U.S. has not had a very effective response to that either, because the Houthis have still shut it down.
Right, and now let's dig into that just for a second, because what is their purpose in shutting down this commerce? Is the benefit just to screw over the United States, or to maybe control and say, hey, no, we're going to blow you up unless you pay the piper? Is it like a toll, extortion type of thing? Really, I don't understand why they're always hitting these ships.
Right. I think they have allegiance to the Hamas in Gaza Strip, and so at least what they say is that they're doing this until Hamas is given humanitarian support, and there's a 2-state solution and all sorts of things related to the Middle East peace process. So now the Houthis have been in a long-standing war with the Saudis. So it's back and forth between Sunni and Shia Muslims, but they've always sat there on the chokehold of the Red Sea, and we've allowed them to do that, and now they have literally shut down a large supply around the world.
Yeah,
Rich, I would also add.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would also add, this whole notion of people say we might cause a wider war. That the reality is we are in a war. It's that the U.S. naively denies it. The Iranian folks know that they're prosecuting a war through their proxies and directly, and they're developing their nuclear weapons. So we've been at war with Iran for quite a while. Our strategy of appeasement has failed. We failed at deterrence, and our weakness over time, as you mentioned, invites aggression. And regrettably, we have missed the ounce of prevention, and we'll have to suffer through the pound of cure as we try to work this now.
Now, General, you just mentioned something that I thought was really poignant. And that was, we're in a war with Iran, which I believe. If people are shooting rockets at you and they're killing your soldiers, that's a war in my best estimation. But
sure.
All that being said, I've had some guests on this show that will go as far to say we've been at war with Iran in one way or another since '79. And whether there's elements of truth to that or elements of hyperbole, either way, I was looking at an article somewhere in one of the papers today, and it showed some adult film star that went to Tehran and went to the old, or was in Iran and went to the old U.S. embassy, and the artwork that's on the wall, like this nearly decapitated Statue of Liberty that's like bleeding out, and just really it really emphasizes how they really feel about us. And I just think, just imagine if there was artwork like that somewhere in the United States in a former, Iranian embassy where we have, the Iranian flag or the Ayatollah being beheaded or something like that. I think this would cause an outrage.
Yeah, of course it would. Yeah, I think that we need to make our efforts punitive towards Iran as well, and they're vulnerable in lots of ways. A lot of their oil economy is on Karj Island. It's very vulnerable for us to attack. There's spy ships in the Red Sea. Reagan sunk half of the Iranian Navy, and lo and behold, there was peace and quiet in the region for a period of time. And Trump killed Soleimani, same thing. So this deterrence is really important. And if we don't deter, and if we don't cause pain in Iran proper, then we're not gonna get to where we need to go, Rich.
General, I want you to stick with me. I want to pull on that thread a little bit and find out a little bit more about what it looks like to directly address this with Iran. So, folks, we're on with Major General Bob Dees, retired U.S. Army general, and he was the commander of the U.S.-Israeli Combined Task Force for Missile Defense. He's coming right back with us. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. We're on with Major General Bob Dees, and he's retired from the U.S. Army after 3 decades of service and was the commander of the U.S.-Israeli Combined Task Force for Missile Defense. And we left off with, you made a comment, and I think it's one I want to delve into a little bit, which is, you said we have to make Iran proper feel this. And I agree with that. You know, my original question last week was, why aren't we hitting Iran? Like, why aren't we going there and doing something and making some noise? But I understand the implications of that, and there could be other ways of doing it that are not as heavy-handed as, striking something. But maybe we should strike something. And if we were, what would those targets be, and what do you have in mind when you say that we need to make Iran feel this?
Right. Well, earlier, Rich, I mentioned Karg Island. Karg Island is an island off the coast of Iran, and it has a large amount of their Iranian oil production. It's a transshipment point. There's also along the coast of Iran 4 major oil ports, and the point is economically we can really impact their oil. We also can impact some of their intelligence gathering capabilities. They've got some intel ships in the Red Sea that just float out there. We know about them. We could easily sink them. That would make a statement. If we're really interested in going a little more serious, clearly we know where most of their nuclear facilities are, and we could do some penetrating strikes on nuclear facilities. It's all a calculation, obviously, about where's their red line, what would cause them to react. But I'm not as worried about that. I think Iran will blink. You look at a comparison of military power, Air Force, Navy, and so forth. It's not a match. The challenge is that we're also engaged in asymmetric warfare. Rich, you're seeing all these drones. Right. This sort of defies the long-standing air superiority, air parity, calculus that we've used for many decades. And now with these drones, with a reasonably cheap drone, they are able to, penetrate and have some kamikaze drones, if you will. And it's a very new and dangerous type of warfare, the very warfare that took out some of our U.S. soldiers here recently.
So why do you think do you think it's that they're not listening to my radio show and you give this advice? I doubt that's the case, right? Why is Biden so going to go with feckless?
I think they have a philosophy, a concept of appeasement. And they on the liberal side feel like if we just give in to people, then they will be kind and generous and agree to cooperate with us. And we know that Iranian mullahs and dictators and tyrants around the world, that's not the way they operate. That's not their value system. The mullahs understand strength, and so we need to achieve peace through strength, deterrence through strength. It's just a difference in a worldview. Regrettably, that's why we need a new administration, Rich.
Amen to that, General. I hear that. Now, let me ask you about what's going on with Hamas. Hamas and the IDF are obviously at odds. How do you handicap this thing? Does it have an end? Does this become the new 20-year war? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I don't think it's a 20-year war, but it is long. It's going to be measured in months instead of weeks. And the reality is that we're into nitty-gritty urban combat, and so it's one bloody, dusty boot in front of another. They've done that in the northern part of Gaza, but there's still some more work to be done in the southern part. The Israelis are working hard to protect civilians, but the Hamas is working equally hard to use civilians as human shields, to use hospitals, schools. So it's ugly, but frankly, it's necessary if we're going to prevent another October 7th.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so a months-long battle. I know that there's a lot of pressure now, politically speaking, on Netanyahu, but it doesn't seem like there's a way for even his critics to kind of oust him at this time. And I think most people are on, at least in Israel, most people are on the side of being safe and not getting attacked again. So they're kind of like, hey, I mean, I like this guy, but I'm with him. And I get that. Right. It makes a lot of sense. So with foreseeably Netanyahu remaining there, do you think that this 40-day ceasefire that they were trying to negotiate becomes an actuality, or is that something you think would not happen with Netanyahu at the helm?
Well, like you say, there's a tremendous pressure. I would be surprised if it happens, but there's tremendous political pressure. It's even in our own country. We see what's happening on college campuses and things. It's a long-term erosion of conservative worldview within the educational hierarchy of America, and we've done it to ourselves. And we have people protesting in favor of Hamas and not criticizing anything that has happened to Israel, but blaming it on Israel. I mean, you and I violently agree on this one, I'm sure. I think Netanyahu will stand firm, too, and it's just going to take time. And people talk about it. It's premature. That right. They need to resolve Hamas, and then let's figure out what we talk about next. But it's premature.
Yeah. Now, General, I want to make sure that we give the website for Healthy Veterans out. What is the website for the great work you're doing there at the National Center for Healthy Veterans?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, Rich. It's healthyveterans.org, healthyveterans.org, and we're just seeing some amazing things. We're a longer-term residential. We're a 9-month program where the veterans come in, do a true life reset, learn about resilience, learn about trauma recovery, learn about career preparation, and then our veterans are national treasures. Commitment, character, competence. You can pull it all together, and we need to get them back out on the street as businessmen and educators. So healthyveterans.org, and y'all come help us because we need all the help we can get to help our veterans.
All right, amigos, make sure you support Major General Bob Dees and check out the website, healthyveterans.org. General, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for staying up late with us. And folks, we're coming right back with your calls and more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And we continue our conversation on what's going on in America at night. And one of the things I want to talk about is something that continues to rear its ugly head, which is censorship. And it's almost like censorship is becoming cool to many of our fellow Americans left of center. It's especially if you are somehow affiliated with something they don't agree with. You don't agree with it. Look, there's plenty of things I don't agree with that the left does, but I don't censor them. In fact, I want them to make all the noise they want so I could make more noise in protest. I don't see why they don't do it the same way, but we've been seeing it through these primaries and the Iowa caucuses where certain big networks wouldn't cover Trump or would cut away as soon as he started talking, saying, well, he's been known to lie. Today, I followed somebody on Instagram. I thought this was interesting. I forget who it was. I should have taken a screenshot. But I hit follow, and I got a notification, and it said, are you sure you want to follow this account? They have consistently posted false information. This was a pro-Trump, like, surrogate. And I just thought, man, talk about censoring people. But this is what they do, and they'll censor anybody. They'll censor you, me, anybody else, journalists, you name it. And I want to get to the bottom of that. I want to get, the scoop. And to do that, we're going to talk with the VP of Legal and Judicial Strategy at Americans for Prosperity Foundation, Casey Mattox. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Oh, you bet. So tell me a little bit about this story I'm looking at here, because apparently there's a journalist that's being censored, and this happens more often than not, from what I can see. Casey Mattox.
Yeah, so this case is truly a stunning example, I think, of especially the kind of censorship that happens at the local level. So basically, you have a journalist, Priscilla Villarreal, in Laredo, Texas. Her particular beat is to criticize the local police and the way that they are behaving and the way that they are not doing their job in a lot of cases. And so the police, of course, have not liked this, don't enjoy the fact that she is saying things about him, is tweeting about him, and that she's actually starting to get a little bit of notoriety. So she asked some questions about a suicide that had happened in the community and about a particular vehicle accident that had happened in the community. Police officers are upset about it. They found an old Texas statute that they think allows them to prosecute her for asking the question, just for asking questions. Wow. And so they actually arrest her over this. Clear violation of the First Amendment rights. You've got a journalist who asks police officers, the most obvious government officials, ask them questions, and she's arrested for this. And the Fifth Circuit actually just handed down a decision that says those police officers were entitled to immunity, that they can't be sued for this action. So it's a closely divided Fifth Circuit. I think this is a case that's going to go to the Supreme Court. But I think this is, despite the fact that this is a case involving police officers, and that looks like the kind of thing that I think for a lot of conservatives, you sort of instinctively want to defend the police officers. This is something that you see all the time coming from the left. And people hiding behind, particularly university officials, hiding behind immunity for clearly violating the First Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. So I think this is an issue that should be on people's radar screen, and that I hope the Supreme Court takes up pretty soon.
Yeah, this is of increasing concern to me. About 6 weeks ago, there was a lawsuit filed by the New Civil Liberties Alliance with respect to this, the State Department setting up this, in effect, censorship committee or whatever, under the name of something else. And it's interesting to me how this is happening. It's happening in that case, government funded. Here again, government funded, right? Because the police are government funded, and I'm as pro police as they come. But I also am pretty against big government and them crossing the line, and I'm always pro liberty and pro me, right, as a citizen. So I look at this and I think, is this me being hyperbolic? Am I seeing an alarming trend of government overreach, or are we just looking at a series of isolated incidents that are really not a trend in the government getting very comfortable going after regular citizens and shutting them up?
Yeah, I think there is reason to see this as being a not just more of the same, but as an alarming new trend. And I think it's particularly, you're seeing this happening on the federal level, The example you give of the NCLA case, there have been a series of these cases. That's, I think, Murphy versus Missouri that the Supreme Court will hear soon, where you have Biden administration officials just making phone calls and sending emails constantly to social media companies and asking them to take tweets down, take Facebook posts down. There's a story actually that I just saw today where evidently there's a claim that the Biden administration was doing this with Amazon, was asking Amazon to downgrade books that the administration didn't like.
Wow.
This is, particularly I think when you have an enormous, powerful federal government with thousands and thousands of people who, I live here in the D.C. area, who take the train into D.C., work in large concrete buildings, and are empowered, at least they think, to go forth and do good in the world. And their version of doing good is censorship. I think it's a particular concern when you have these, large amounts of federal workers who have that kind of power, and these companies ultimately have to listen to, and so they end up getting coerced into making decisions that the companies may not have made. And I think we're just starting to see what's really been going on behind closed doors.
Folks, we're on with Casey Mattox. He's Vice President of Legal and Judicial Strategy at Americans for Prosperity Foundation. And I want to continue our discussion with him on free speech and is it under fire? And I mean, I think it's always under fire one way or another, but it seems that, like he just alluded to, it seems like there is a somewhat of a concerted effort, or at least an alarming trend, where the federal government is utilizing its power to go after anything it doesn't like. And that, to me, is as un-American as it comes. So stick with us. We're coming right back with Casey Mattox. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
There's efforts right now to force Chick-fil-A stores to remain open on Sundays in New York State. And that's just one of many absurd laws that have been coursing through the nation for decades. This is according to a piece in the New York Post by our guest, Casey Mattox, where he poses a question, several questions, but I outlines a couple of things, like it's illegal for donkeys to sleep in bathtubs in Arizona, or in Utah, you can't fish from horseback. And there's plenty more of them. But I find it remarkable that the state would try to force a business to be open on a certain day. And I guess I shouldn't find it remarkable because, I live in Bergen County, New Jersey, where everything's closed on Sundays because we still have blue laws. So I guess that's the anti-blue law. Casey Mattox, tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
I think this is basically a story of lawmakers forgetting what exactly their job is. We elect people to protect our civil liberties, to make sure that our property is safe, that our persons are safe, our families are safe. That's basically the job of a lawmaker, right? And instead, what we end up seeing, this is just so often the case. You have lawmakers who, frankly, I think just get bored with their actual job, and they engage in this sort of culture warring kind of thing that is really just basically scoring points with their team. But all it does is just limit liberty for everybody else. And I think that's what's happening in New York here. You've got this effort to try to solve a supposed problem of people not having access to chicken sandwiches on Sundays. Yeah. There are other places to eat. Obviously, they're not as good as Chick-fil-A, but there are other places that you can eat when Chick-fil-A is closed.
Right.
So this is just it's an unfortunately common occurrence, right? California just decided to mandate gender-neutral toy aisles.
That's correct.
I mean, Connecticut for a while has regulated the bounciness of pickles. I don't even know why I want a pickle to bounce, but they've regulated that, right? So it's just an unfortunately common reality.
Now, it doesn't stop there, though. There's a bunch of these silly things. There's even one where in California there's a push to ban calling a nut-based milk product, like almond milk, to not call it milk anymore. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. You couldn't call almond milk. Apparently, if you've ever seen what's the movie, Meet the Fockers, right? So in that movie, how do you milk a nut? Right. Evidently, you have lawmakers who think that we really don't understand that almond milk is not actually milk. So they're going to spend their time trying to regulate that instead of, making sure we actually have a budget. It's I think it's up to us as citizens. That's kind of the point of the piece, was really to say, look, we've got to start actually as voters, as citizens, holding lawmakers accountable. Not to any particular policy. We should do that too, but we should also just make them be serious people who are actually going to focus on what we send them, what we elect them to do, instead of spending their time on nonsense like this.
I think this is so problematic and emblematic at the same time of how the government really, I guess to put it a nice way is to call it a nanny state, but to put it the way I see it, is the government truly doesn't respect the citizenry and doesn't see this as a government of, by, and for the people, but sees it as a government for themselves where we're kind of subservient to them and can't make up our own minds. And I for one, find it insulting. But am I in the minority, or is it that people don't know? Why do you think things like this why do they get away with it?
Yeah, I think we, too often, we end up electing officials. We end up electing people to be talking heads for us instead of to go do what is frankly should be a pretty boring job, being a lawmaker. It ought to be a lot of committee hearings and a lot of working with other
and reading
relatively
bills.
Boring people. That's right. That's what it should be. Instead, we end up with lawmakers who seem to spend all their time on social media and on talk shows, right? Yeah. And frankly, I'd much rather a world where it's all the rest of us are the ones who are on social media talking about them, and they don't have time because they're off actually attempting to make good policy and figure out how to spend our tax dollars or how to give them back to us.
Now, if you had to handicap this thing with Chick-fil-A, does this come down to like a constitutional question about their, right to practice their religion and not work on Sundays, or is there a different way of framing this?
Yeah, I think that's basically right. I think ultimately, I suspect that New York will end up backing down over this. I think it's the kind of thing where you try to score some points with your team, but you don't actually do this because I think they probably realize that if you mandate this, most mandates of this kind against conscience don't actually result in people violating their conscience. The bottom line is New York isn't actually going to be able to succeed in making Chick-fil-A open on Sundays. All they're going to do is succeed in denying everyone access to Chick-fil-A 6 days of the week. And I think ultimately they have to realize that, and they back down off this idea.
All right, I hope so, because, everybody loves their Chick-fil-A. Folks, we're on with Casey Mattox, and we're coming right back. We're going to learn a little bit more about the work he's doing at AFP and what else they're going to be tackling down the road. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We're continuing our discussion with Casey Mattox, Vice President of Legal and Judicial Strategy at Americans for Prosperity Foundation. And Casey Mattox, in the couple of minutes we have left, I want you to let us know a little bit about the work that you do at AFPF and what can we expect to be coming down the pipe.
Well, at AFP is obviously the nation's largest grassroots organization working to, among other things, defend the American dream. And so what I would encourage people to do is to just check out our website. Go to afphq.org and you'll see there's an action center that's probably the best thing to get connected to. Because it's really a lot of the current issues that we are working on, that our grassroots are being engaged on, and contacting not only the members of Congress, but also state legislators, because they need to hear from you too. Many of the things we just talked about, the sort of things where lawmakers get distracted by shiny objects and miss doing the basic things that they should be doing. A lot of that happens at the state level, as we were discussing. So would encourage you to go there. I mean, the list is long, the things that are on people's minds. Securing the border, Bidenomics and the failures of Bidenomics and the way that it's making it much more difficult for people to be able to make ends meet. And so I think there are plenty of things there, for people to not just sort of take that and accept it and complain about it. But if you're going to complain to the lawmakers who have the power to actually do something about it. We make it really easy for people to do that through the Action Center at afphq.org.
And do you have any big lawsuits you're planning coming up?
Well, there are a few that we are monitoring, working on at the Supreme Court. The biggest one is the one that was most recently argued, the Loper Bright and Relentless case. This is two cases that could fundamentally change the way that the federal government works and make sure that we sort of put back in the hands of Congress the job of making laws instead of having them made by unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. They're two very important cases that may have gone under the radar screen, but are extremely important, and it's likely that those cases will be decided in June this year.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to an update on that when it happens. Casey Mattox, Vice President of Legal and Judicial Strategy at Americans for Prosperity Foundation. I want to thank you for being here with us. Very, very good conversation, and I'm looking forward to updates as we go on. What's the website if people want to check out the work you're doing?
Sure. It's afphq.org.
Fantastic. Casey Mattox, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I appreciate you staying up late to be with us. And folks, we're coming right back with Open Phone America. That's right. You guys get to weigh in on everything that's happening in America at night. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And welcome to hour number 3 of the program. It's Open Phone America, where you get to weigh in. That's a time-honored tradition here on this program, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We had some discussion on what is going on with Black Americans, and are they going to be on board with Biden or not in the upcoming election? Well, it seems like more and more of them are speaking out saying they're not very happy with Joe Biden. And with that being said, it's being said now that there are people saying, well, what happens is if you do well in South Carolina, then you didn't lose any black support. And I don't know if we can use South Carolina as a litmus for the votes of an entire minority voting bloc, but we'll find out about that. But I want you to hear a little bit of what some black American voters had to say on MSNBC last week. Listen to this.
I'm trying to grow my business. As far as Biden, I haven't seen Biden really care about business like that. And my concern is having my business so that I can build generational wealth, so my kids can see and have something to take upon when I'm not here.
You're hearing that too, that there are some people in your orbit who are either voting for Donald Trump or considering it?
For sure. A lot of my friends are obviously my age, so we're a little younger. We've only voted once, for a president, and Trump is kind of all we know, and they're kind of Trump and Biden. They're like, well, we were broke with Biden, we weren't with Trump, and that's kind of the only thing that I'm hearing over and over again is that, well, Trump, we had money.
Now, that brings me back to the conversation I had when I went to my favorite gluten-free bakery, and the proprietor, very sweet woman, took exception to me saying that, well, I don't think things are so bad. I made the same point. I said, things weren't so bad with Trump. Everybody was making money. My kids had jobs. They were doing good. And my kids still both have a job. But, obviously the economy's tightened for sure. And she was very bothered. And again, her words to me, and I haven't been back to my favorite gluten-free place because I felt like she didn't want me to come back. Honestly, she said, that is sad. All you care about is your bottom line, and that is sad. And I felt really bad about that. I really did. Because I don't know if she doesn't want to be my friend anymore. I don't know. And, I wouldn't do that to her. It's not like I go, oh, my gosh, you like Biden or you don't like Trump. I'm never buying from your bakery again. I don't do stuff like that. I don't understand why we have this. This is why so many people are caught up in this. We're going to have a civil war. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people like me out there. I'm pretty sure. I don't think most people are, like, hey, which side are you on? Pick a side. I don't think that's the case for most. I think that's the case for, people that are into that. But I don't think that's the case for most people. I think most people don't even care about politics. They're too busy watching the Grammys, right? Where Killer Mike got arrested. But Jim Clyburn. Jim Clyburn is the congressman from South Carolina. He says that regarding the South Carolina primary, Biden has not lost any support amongst African Americans. Listen to this.
He got 96% of the vote in this primary, but his largest percentage, over 97%, was in the town of Orangeburg, where there are 2 HBCUs and a community college. And he got the largest percentage of the whole state. So that demonstrates to me what I've been saying all the time, that Joe Biden has not lost any support among African Americans.
So that's Clyburn. He's still on board with Biden. And as you know, Biden kind of clinched the deal when he got the Clyburn endorsement. That's when he was able to really cut the deal that he cut with Bernie Sanders and the rest of the crew, Hillary Clinton and the rest that were Kamala Harris. She might have dropped out by that point. But, there was a number of people running for president. Bernie Sanders seemed to be well positioned to win it. And then in comes Biden, from behind making this deal, and voila. So the Clyburn endorsement for Biden was a very big deal back in 2020. In 2020. I know what I'm talking about. And we'll see if that continues to ring true. One thing for sure I can tell you is I'm going to a number of places. I've seen a number of people, and the consensus seems to be nobody likes Joe Biden, in particular the Democrats. And that's not anything new, but it seems to be increasing in popularity. So I want to put that out there. Also, we talked about what's going on with the military conflict that we're having in the Middle East, our 85 strikes. We had a great update from General Bob Dees. And if you miss any of those, you can always check out the interviews once the show wraps up. We wrap up at 1 a.m. Eastern. So around 1:30-ish, you can go to the website, Rich Valdez, America at Night, and you could listen to the broadcast, re-listen to it, share it, do what you want to do. And, of course, from there, it gets published to all the podcast platforms, whether it's Google Podcast or TuneIn or Apple Podcasts or however you get your podcast. If you're a podcast listener, you can listen to the podcast of this broadcast each day through that service as well. Or just go to the website, richvaldezamericatnight.com. And I want to get into a couple of interesting stories tonight. Mr. Hinton in the control room has pointed out 3 stories in my list of articles that we call the Midnight Zoo here. And these articles, let me give you these headlines. I may not get to all of them, so disclaimer. I might be false advertising with my T's here. But number 15, woman steals memory card from center console of man's car. Discovers it contains footage of a murder. Yep, that's a real story. Then we've got financial worker gives $25 million to fraudsters using deep fake technology. Fascinating. And then we've got folks in Paris are voting to triple the parking costs for SUVs. They would hate me. Anyway, we got a lot more to talk about when we come back. The number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
My message to Speaker Johnson is pay attention to what the Senate's doing. We got a bipartisan deal. You're going to see the detail of it this week. It'll be introduced on Wednesday.
That is Joel Barboso Biden talking about what's going on with the border bill. He keeps saying, look, we gotta get it passed, Speaker Biden, beer. Anyway, so I want to go to your calls on this and see what you guys have to say. Let's go to Daniel, Houston, Texas, listening on KYST Patriot Radio 920. Daniel, you're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to make a comment. I heard the Democrat official that you had on there stating about the 98% how great Biden did in South Carolina.
Right.
They don't tell the full story. I heard a report that only 4% of the voting public actually came out to vote in the primary. So why is 98% of 4% so wonderful?
Yeah, right. That's a great question. That's a great question. And again, I don't see how, and again, Clyburn wasn't necessarily saying that, so to be fair, it was several people were quoting Clyburn in the media saying, well, if Biden is getting that good of a result with black votes in South Carolina, then he's a shoo-in for the rest of the country. And that's the part that I think is really problematic here. How and where and why would anybody think that South Carolina is somehow the bellwether for the rest of America when it comes to minority voting? I don't get it. So I think your point is incredibly apt because, yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Why would we do that? A, for that small microcosm of the population, and B, it makes no sense. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, Daniel, what do you think happens? I mean, you're in Houston. You're down there. What do you think ends up happening with the border? Does it remain an open disaster, or does Biden have to shore things up and say, look, the economy's not as bad as you expected it to be. We had some GDP growth, and guess what? I've empowered our border agents to shut the border down. So reelect me. We're doing good. Do you think he goes that route?
Not see it happen. No.
Yeah.
I think, and especially the American people, the patriots of Texas, know exactly what is going on with that border. We have known it for many years now, and to be in all honesty, the only way that I see Biden getting reelected is if they're able to cheat and totally sway the election the way they did in 20, and I honestly believe that they did steal that election in 2020.
Yeah, well, without question, there were so many abnormalities. I mean, just too many to count when it comes to mail-in ballots. And mail-in ballots are just not the recipe for success with any election. And for that reason alone, right, I think oftentimes when it comes to government, there's a standard, and the standard is usually to avoid even the appearance of an impropriety. Right, that's when you work in government. That's a standard that's constantly pushed. Yet with an election, they don't mind even the appearance of an impropriety, or let alone an impropriety. They don't care. They just went with it, and obviously that was problematic for many people who lost some trust in the system, and I think will hopefully have some trust regained. When we've seen conservative Republicans get elected in New York City. Vicky Palladino won in a landslide in Queens, New York, of all places. So Republicans are winning. So for anybody who thinks that we can't ever have a fair election again, I would point you to New York and other places where it was unlikely for a conservative Republican to win, and they did win. Doesn't mean that every election is going to be honest, but it also doesn't mean that every election is a fraud. So, Daniel, thank you for your thoughts. Great point. Big shout out to everybody listening in Houston on KYST, the Patriot Talk 920. Excellent station. I plan to come and visit you guys soon, so I'll keep you posted on that as well. Anyway, folks, we're going to continue with the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. But I want to play the rest of the Biden clip before we go. So let me set this one up for you. It's the Biden clip that follows the one that we just played. And in this one, Joe Biden, he goes on to say that the Senate border bill addresses all of the House GOP concerns. Listen to this.
They're talking about the border. It's out of control. Well, guess what? Everything in that bipartisan bill gives me control, gives us control, and still meets the needs of the people being able to legally come across. We're going to open avenues of legality and shut down the ones that are not coming through the points of entry.
So Biden, again, and it's hard to make sense of everything he says because he really sounds so winded, so tired, so weak. But I don't necessarily agree, right? I don't think it meets everything that the House GOP is concerned about, because if it was, they wouldn't be saying that the deal is dead on arrival. Now, some are, of course, on the left. They're going to say, well, hold on, Rich. That's exactly the problem here. We've got Trump playing politics, right? Trump is pushing Speaker Johnson to not accept any deal so that he can continue the chaos at the border, so that we could blame it on Biden. Instead of actually passing a budget, you've got Congress out there just playing politics with people's lives, and that's shameful. Well, to that I say, no, I don't think that's the case at all. This border issue is an issue that's been going on for quite a while, right? Really, quite a while. And irrespective of what's going on for quite a while, we have a certain reality. And the certain reality that we have is there was a president not that long ago that was able to slow down to a trickle the amount of people coming across the border. And then it stopped to a snail's pace once COVID was in full effect and they were able to use the Title 42. So I understand you can't use Title 42 now, or at least, whatever. That's fine, right? There's no pandemic, and I'm not inviting them to put one in play. However, putting in the MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocols, what they call the Remain in Mexico policy, this is a big deal. right? And this is a policy that worked. And it's just one policy. There's several policies there that I think actually work, right? But Chuck Schumer, he continues with his shenanigans. He continues to say that it's Trump that wants chaos. Listen to this.
So this is crucial for America. It's a turning point. History is going to look over our shoulders and say, did we rise to the occasion? To his credit, Mitch McConnell did. But too many Republicans, including Speaker Johnson, are just scared to death of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has said he wants chaos. Donald Trump has said, well, wait till I become president. That'll take at least a year. Ukraine could be gone. The border will get much worse. War in the Middle East will get worse, maybe bringing us into it. He's doing it all for political reasons. And let me just say, will senators, the crucial question, the $64,000 question, the majority of Republican senators know this bill is the right thing to do. It's a compromise. I don't like everything in it. Neither does McConnell. But it's a compromise. That's the only way you get things important done in the Senate. We proved that 2 years ago in our bipartisan legislation. And will the senators drown out the political noise from Trump and his minions and do the right thing for America? It's a crucial question. History is looking down on every one of us right now.
Was history looking at you, Senator Schumer, when you threatened the Supreme Court? Right? Was history looking when any number of bills have been passed? And, you know, something Senator Schumer just said that I thought was really interesting. He said they're afraid of Donald Trump. No, I don't think anybody's afraid of Donald Trump. People are afraid of the massive amount of people that support Donald Trump. That's what they're afraid of. And I think it's worthy of note that that massive number of people don't support McConnell and they don't support Schumer. So what does that tell you? It's very clear. The people are behind Trump. That's what these guys are all afraid of. And that's what they've got to get in their head. And I think they know it, and that's why they come at Trump as hard as they do. Anyway, we'll continue our discussions more straight ahead. There's a couple of interesting stories on missiles that I want to share, plus that other story I teased before. And, well, anyway, I'll leave it for you guys. 833-482-5337 is the phone number. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. If you want to join us, feel free. Don't go anywhere. I am Rich Valdez. We're coming right back. Don't move a muscle.
Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
Just after sunrise, we saw the first group of migrants make their way from Mexico through a gap between the 30-foot steel border fence and rocks, ducking under a bit of razor wire and into the United States. We were surprised to see the number of people coming through from China, nearly 7,000 miles away.
So, how old are you?
I'm 20 years old.
This man, a college graduate, told us he hoped to find work in Los Angeles. He said his trip from China took 40 days.
What countries did you go through?
Thailand, Morocco, Ecuador, Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua.
Jeez.
30 minutes later, a smuggler's SUV raced along the border fence and dropped another group at the same spot.
So that's a report from 60 Minutes, CBS News, saying that Chinese illegal immigrants are the fastest growing group crossing the border from Mexico into the U.S. at the southern border. Fastest growing group. Now, this has to be alarming, right? If anybody's out there saying, oh, come on, Rich, now you're just being a xenophobe. Now you're just being like, one of those people during COVID. You can't call it the China virus and whatever. No. A, you can call it that, I think. And B, what in the world is happening here? Why on earth are people leaving China to come to the United States through our southern border? Whatever happened to the people that were, give me your tired, you're poor, looking for the American dream, people coming from El Salvador? Oh, that's right. El Salvador elected a president that many say is the Trump of El Salvador, and he's fixing crime and he's fixing the country, so less people are leaving, and we're having less immigration from El Salvador. But now we're seeing more coming in from China. Now, is it women and children that are coming from China? No, it's not. It's men that are all old enough to fight, fighting age men. People used to tell me this a while back, and I was like, I think you're making much ado about nothing. But I don't agree with that anymore. After you talk to a couple of generals and you talk to a couple of people that are serious people that have experience that I don't have, and they sit there and they tell you, listen, we've got a problem on our hands, and we don't know how this will form, what it'll form, but at when you have 7 million people, and again, I don't know if that's part of Biden's plan, right? I think Biden's plan is just to replace the electorate, to just have people that he's helped out and he can cash in a favor and say, hey, listen, it's me, I need you to bend for a friend, so to speak, and bend their will to his. But no. I think what's happening here is that loophole, if you want to call it that, or this weakness is being exploited by our enemies, and we're seeing the results of it when 60 Minutes, of all people, is covering a story that, Donald Trump has been echoing for forever, saying they're coming from China, they're sending us their worst, right? And it's true. All of it's true. I think Trump put out a tweet today, or Truth on Truth Social, his social media site, and he said, what haven't I been right about? And, of course, that's true Trumpian fashion. But I think the bottom line there is he has been right. And there is an alarming trend of Chinese nationals coming through the border. So I want to, beg the question of you, the audience. What happens here? Are they proliferating different types of weapons? The weapons are here? Are they joining sleeper cells? Are they just coming here to work in the restaurant industry? Like, what do you think they're coming here for? I'm very curious to know your thoughts on this. I also want to get your take on some of the other topics that we've discussed. But this is the fastest group, Chinese immigrants. And again, these people are coming through a 4-foot gap at the end of the border fence near San Diego, also coming through Texas. This illegal entryway, it's a new route for those that are hoping to be in the country. And they're ducking right under the razor wire that's supposed to stop them from coming into the United States. I'm looking at a picture right here. There's a woman, young woman, young man, another young man, another one behind him. And they literally just ducked right under the razor wire. And there's a gap that just lets people right in. 7,000 miles away, as you heard in the report. Crazy. Look at this. And then there's a photo of the ground. You see the passports thrown on the ground for the once they get to stateside, they throw their information on the floor so that they don't have ID when they approach. Crazy. Just absolutely crazy what's going on here. Look at this photo. I'll put this out on Twitter so you can take a look at it, at Rich Valdez with an S, and let me know your thoughts. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Police in Bellevue say an Air Force museum in Ohio called them last Wednesday evening. Museum officials told police they got a call from a man who wanted to donate a rocket that belonged to a neighbor who'd died. Well, that man told police their neighbor had originally bought it from an estate sale. The police department's bomb squad went to the man's home the next day. They did deem that rocket inert. They said it contained no rocket fuel, so there's no risk of it exploding. Police just left the rocket in the man's garage so he can ultimately donate it to a museum.
So this guy, again, you heard it right there from the report. This guy finds a missile in his garage. Now, it was his neighbor's garage or his neighbor's missile. The guy died. He left him the stuff, and, boom, he's got it now. And it's fascinating. I'm looking at a picture of this. I'll put this out on Twitter as well if you want to go. It's at Rich Valdez with an S if you want to see this picture. Wow. Let me tell you something. It looks like it's as long as a car. And it's really, really old and scratched up. But fascinating that they're going to let him keep this missile. And, I've always wanted my own missile, but I don't have a missile. This guy's got a missile. Pretty cool. Now, with respect to that, would you if you could, right? Is that part of the Second Amendment? I'd love one. But it begs the question, can regular people just go building nuclear weapons? Well, that's the question that's posed in an essay that's in the Wall Street Journal by Sharon Weinberger, saying that she first learned of a secretive Pentagon-funded study about rogue nuclear entrepreneurs about 5 years ago from Steve Lukasik and a former head of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, saying they were talking about the Office of Net Assessment, the Long-Term Analysis Division of the Pentagon, and then they were talking about China's rise in its capabilities. And Lukasik looked at whether a private company or a wealthy entrepreneur could provide nuclear weapons. With this following quote, listen to this. We worked out what a private organization would do if it wanted to build and sell nuclear weapons. It turned out only to be a fairly profitable business. Intrigued, she asked if he would share a copy. A few days later, they met, and or actually he sent over 4 volumes of the study, which was completed back in 2013. The report laid out in exquisite detail how such an enterprise could operate. And it took as little as only $1 billion. And this investment would, along with 5 years, could produce the first bomb. So they're wondering, could this happen in Tehran? Could this happen in other parts of the world where you have a wealthy donor come in and say, yeah, I love the idea of a nuclear Iran, and I'm gonna chime in, rather than these proxy groups and whatnot, just an actual Silicon Valley type saying, yeah, no, I got your back. Interesting, right? I don't know. I'd love your thoughts on this because I think it's kind of crazy. Let's go to Al. He's in Kalispell, Montana on KOFI. Al, what do you think about this? Should private individuals be able to finance nuclear weapons?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know. It just sounds too dangerous to have someone unstable out there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we regulate other countries from having nuclear weapons. Why wouldn't we regulate some guy that has enough money to just do it, right? That would mean if you're rich, all of a sudden you can become your own country and you could start your own army, and voila, you could take over the world literally, or at least disrupt the world. So I think that's a good point. Now, Al, tell me about your dad. He was born in the UK?
Yeah, my dad was born in London, England. My grandparents were both American citizens, and my father was born in London, an American citizen, not a crown subject. And, like my grandfather was World War I veteran. My dad was a World War II veteran. Both honorably discharged. Why can't we pass a law here saying that if you're born in the United States and your parents are not American citizens, then they choose a nationality of their origin for their child?
Yeah, I think that's something that we could entertain. I think the issue there is there's been an interpretation of the 14th Amendment, which has allowed for chain migration, and it's kind of, until that gets reread and reheard and relitigated, I think we're kind of screwed on that one. I mean, there's a couple of constitutional issues that I think we need to bring to the table. I think the other one is term limits, right? Those are two very important constitutional questions that I think need to be answered and resolved and heard by the court. Good point. And speaking of the UK, what are your thoughts on the King of England, King Charles, formerly known as Prince Charles, announcing he has cancer and he's going to be going into treatment, so he's not going to be kinging too much lately?
Well, I wish him well. I mean, the guy's got cancer. I don't want to see anybody have cancer. I'm sure his taxpayers are willing to pay for that.
I'm with you, Al. I think, their taxpayer-funded medical system hopefully will get him the best treatment, and I wouldn't be surprised if he left the country to get the best treatment because, when you're a king, I guess you can do those types of things. Al in Kalispell, Montana, listening on KOFI. Thank you for your call. We continue with the rest of your calls and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, let's swing it over to the middle of the country, Chicago, WGN. Let's check in with Jim. Hey, Jim, you're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Rich. I'm calling for the resignation of Alvin Bragg. He has a history, and that history had to go all the way back to, he was like the chief overseer for the, Department of Commerce, first in New York, where it was a census concern. And what that did ultimately was practically change the demographic of the Democrat and the Republican in the each district. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, listen, I'm no fan of D.A. Braggs. I think there's a number of things that he's done, not the least of which is what he's most famous for now, which is bringing this frivolous charge against President Trump that most of the lawyers I've spoken to think that it was crazy, they never should have brought it, and B, that it'll never work. But yet that's what he's done. And I think if we look at that example, man, let me tell you, I think he's not really taken seriously by his peers. I don't think other attorneys, I guess if you work for him, you're probably like, yeah, thank you, Mr. District Attorney. But I think for the most part, his real peers think the guy's useless as a litigator, and he's useless with that regard, right, with regard to the Trump case. I will say, I went to a funeral or a wake not too long ago, and I bumped into somebody that was associated with his office and said that as an operator, like running the office as an administrator, that he brought a lot of good change to that office that helped them function better to help women that were, assaulted, victims of domestic violence, things of that nature. There was like a backlog, and he streamlined certain systems and made it better for these attorneys to be able to bring those cases. So, and that's from somebody that, works and, I would say is probably neutral. I wouldn't say they're a critic of his or a fan of his, but they had some positive things to say in terms of him as, like I said, as an actual manager. But when it comes to his political sense, I think he's incredibly ambitious and will do anything he can to make a name for himself, including trashing the former president and bringing a frivolous case. So That's my thought on that one, Jim. Thank you for your call. Big shout out to everybody listening in Chicago on WGN. And speaking of women, there's a story here about a hooker, a prostitute, a woman of ill repute, a woman of the night. And this working girl stole a memory card from one of her Johns, right? One of her clients, a seeker of sex work, if you will. And it turns out this thing is a key, a major clue to an Alaska murder trial. Listen to this. This gets crazier as it goes. First of all, when you see the picture of this woman, you're going to be like, wow, that people are paying her for sex work? That's crazy. That's the biggest story here. But then there's this story. It's Anchorage, Alaska. And this woman, she's got a lengthy criminal history, theft, assault, prostitution. And she gets into a truck with a guy who had picked her up for a date, quote-unquote date, near Anchorage, close to the downtown section. When he left her alone in the vehicle, she stole a digital memory card from the center console of his car. Now, more than 4 years later, she found on that card what is the clue to a double murder trial that's about to begin this week. Gruesome photos and videos of a woman being beaten and strangled at a Marriott hotel by her attacker, speaking in a strong accent, and he urged her to die. Wow. Absolutely horrible. I'm not going to read the rest. It was kind of crazy, but very brutal. And, it's horrible. So the bottom line here is she finds this major clue, and it's like a breakthrough in this case. And after a week after she gets this SD card, she turns it over to the police, and now they're putting all the pieces together. Now, what's interesting here is, why on earth, if you are a hooker and you get into a car with a guy and he leaves you alone for a minute, why, of all things, do you steal a SD card, a digital memory card from the center console? Like, what value did she think that possessed? I don't know. I think this whole story is crazy, and as it unfolds, we'll get you, all the updates on it. But it's a very interesting story of how this woman was killed and the person that they now suspect guilty of a couple of other murders. And, they cracked this cold case wide open. And I just thought that was a fascinating story. Anyway, folks, that's it for me. The music means it's time for me to go. But you get to stay here and listen to the next show, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Until then, until the next time, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Tomorrow we're going to have a kick butt show, so I hope you tune in. And get at me on social media at Rich Valdez with an S. Good night, America. God bless.